Every satisfying click you made today was designed by someone you will never meet. Think about that for a second. The shirt you bought last Thursday, the show you watched last night, the restaurant you tried this weekend. You thought those were your choices, your taste, your personality. But what if I told you that every single one of those decisions was quietly, invisibly, nudged into your lap by a machine that knows you better than your own mother does? What if I told you that the life you are living right now, the one you think you freely chose, was assembled for you, piece by piece, like furniture from a warehouse, by an algorithm that watched you while you slept, while you scrolled, while you hesitated for half a second on a photo of someone else's kitchen? This is not a conspiracy theory. This is the business model of the 21st century. And by the end of this story, you will understand exactly how it works, who built it, and why breaking free from it might be the most important financial decision you ever make. Let us start with a simple experiment. Open your phone right now. Look at the last 5 things you purchased online. Now ask yourself, how did you find those products? Did you walk into a store and pick them up off a shelf? Did a friend recommend them over coffee? Or did they just appear? A targeted ad on your feed? A recommendation on a shopping page? A video review that somehow popped up the same week you were thinking about buying exactly that thing? If you are being honest, the answer is almost always the same. You did not find the product. The product found you. And that distinction, that tiny little shift from you seeking to you being served, that is the most profitable magic trick in the history of commerce. We like to tell ourselves a comforting story. The story goes like this. I am an individual. I have preferences. I have taste. I make decisions based on who I am. It is a beautiful narrative. It is also, for the most part, a lie. Not a malicious lie. Not a lie someone whispered in your ear. More like a lie the whole culture agreed to tell because the truth is too uncomfortable. The truth is that your preferences are not fixed stars in the sky that you navigate by. They are wet clay. And for the last 2 decades, the most powerful companies on earth have been quietly pressing their thumbs into that clay, shaping it, molding it, and selling the finished product back to you as your identity. But here is the thing that most people miss. This did not start with Silicon Valley. This did not start with the internet. The machine that shapes your desires is older than your grandparents. It has roots that reach back almost 100 years, to a time when a handful of men in expensive suits sat in rooms filled with cigarette smoke and asked themselves one very dangerous question. How do you make a free person buy something they do not need? To understand where we are, we have to go back to where this all began. And it begins, as so many dark stories do, in America. Specifically, it begins in the 1920s and 1930s, in the golden age of industrial production, when factories could suddenly make more stuff than people could possibly use. This was a new problem. For most of human history, the issue was scarcity. There was not enough. Not enough food, not enough clothing, not enough shelter. People bought what they needed because they needed it. The economy was driven by necessity, but after the assembly line, after mass production, the equation flipped. Suddenly, there was too much. Warehouses full of radios, racks full of dresses, lots full of automobiles. And if people only bought what they needed, the whole system would grind to a halt. So a new industry was born. Not manufacturing, not banking. Something more subtle, more psychological. The industry of desire. And the man who arguably did more than anyone to build that industry was a nephew of Sigmund Freud. His name was Edward Bernays. You have probably never heard of him. That is, by design. Bernays arrived in New York in the early 20th century with a very specific insight borrowed from his uncle's work. Human beings do not make decisions rationally. They make decisions emotionally, and then they rationalize those decisions after the fact. This was a revolutionary idea at the time, and Bernays understood its commercial power before almost anyone else. If you could tap into a person's emotions, their fears, their desires, their need to belong, you can make them want things they never knew they wanted. You could manufacture demand the same way Ford manufactured cars. Here's a story that shows you exactly how this worked. In the 1920s, the tobacco industry had a problem. Only men smoked in public. Women smoking was considered vulgar, even scandalous. That was half the population locked out of the market. The American Tobacco Company hired Bernays to fix this. Now, a normal advertising man would have put up posters saying, "Hey ladies, try cigarettes." Bernays did something far more devious. He hired a group of fashionable young women to march in the 1929 Easter Day Parade in New York City. He told the press these women would be lighting up what he called torches of freedom. He framed cigarettes not as a product, but as a symbol of women's liberation, of independence, of equality. The newspapers ate it up. Within a year, it became socially acceptable for women to smoke in public. He did not sell cigarettes. He sold an identity. He sold freedom. He sold rebellion. And it worked. Because people do not buy products. They buy stories about who they want to be. This is the seed, the original blueprint for everything that came after. Bernays proved that you do not need to appeal to logic. You need to appeal to the self-image. And for the next 3 decades, this idea spread like a virus through American business. By the 1950s, it had become the operating system of the entire consumer economy. Picture America in 1955. The war is over. The suburbs are booming. Levittown is spreading across Long Island like a well-organized fungus. And inside every one of those identical houses is a family who has been told, for the first time in human history, that happiness is something you can purchase. The television set in the living room is not just entertainment, it is a delivery system. Every 15 minutes, a commercial interrupts the show to tell you that your kitchen is not modern enough, that your car is last year's model, that your neighbors have a better lawnmower. And this is the crucial part. It works not because people are stupid. It works because people are social creatures. We define ourselves by comparison. We look at each other and we ask, am I keeping up? Am I enough? And every single advertisement is engineered to make the answer just for a moment feel like no. Not yet. But you could be, if you just buy this one more thing. General Motors was one of the first companies to weaponize this insight on an industrial scale. In the 1920s, Henry Ford's philosophy was simple. Make one car, make it well, make it affordable, the Model T. Same color, same design, year after year. But Alfred Sloan, at General Motors, had a different idea. He introduced the concept of the annual model change. Every year, a new design, new tail fins, new chrome. Not because the old car stopped working, but because the old car stopped being fashionable. Sloan did not sell transportation. He sold obsolescence. He trained an entire generation to feel embarrassed by last year's purchase. And that training, that deep programming of shame and desire, never went away. It just found new delivery systems. Now, let us fast forward. Because what Bernays started in the 1920s and Sloan perfected in the 1950s has been supercharged beyond anything those men could have imagined. The difference between then and now is not just scale, it is precision. In the old days, a television commercial was a shotgun blast. You pointed it at a general audience and hoped it hit someone who might buy your product. Millions of people saw the same ad, whether it was relevant to them or not. It was crude. It was wasteful. It was still incredibly effective, but it had a fundamental limitation. It could not see you. It did not know if you paused on the couch at 2 a.m. because you were lonely. It did not know that you just went through a breakup, or that you had been quietly looking at gym memberships for 3 weeks but never signed up. The television was blind. It just shouted into the room and hoped for the best. The algorithm is not blind. The algorithm sees everything. Let me explain what actually happens when you pick up your phone. You open an app. Maybe it is a social media platform. Maybe it is a shopping site. Maybe it is a news feed. The moment you open it, a clock starts. The system begins recording. Not just what you click on, what you almost click on. How long you hover over an image before scrolling past. The speed at which you scroll. The time of day. Your location. The weather in your city. Whether you're on Wi-Fi or cellular data, which can indicate if you're at home or out. Whether you just came from a fitness app or a food delivery app. All of this, every microscopic behavior, is fed into a machine learning model that has one job: predict what you will do next, and then make it easier for you to do it. This is not recommendation. This is behavioral architecture. There is a massive difference. A recommendation says, "Hey, you might like this." Behavioral architecture says, "We have restructured your entire environment so that the path of least resistance leads exactly where we want you to go." It is the difference between a friend suggesting a restaurant and someone secretly rebuilding every road in your city so that no matter which direction you drive, you end up at the same restaurant. Here is a number that should scare you. The average person makes about 35,000 decisions a day. Most of them are tiny. What to eat, what to wear, what to watch, where to tap on a screen. And the science is very clear on this. The more decisions you make, the worse you get at making them. This is called decision fatigue. Your willpower is not infinite. It drains throughout the day like a battery. By the time you get home from work, by the time you are on the couch at 9 p.m., scrolling through your phone, your decision-making ability is at its lowest point. And that, right there, is exactly when the algorithm hits you hardest. That is when the targeted ads show up. That is when the one-click purchase button glows on your screen. That is when the autoplay cues the next episode. Because the system has learned, through billions of data points, from billions of users, that a tired mind is a compliant mind. And this is where it gets personal. Because the algorithm does not just sell you products. It sells you a lifestyle. It watches your behavior patterns, and it constructs a profile, a digital twin, a shadow version of you that exists inside the servers of companies you have never heard of. And that shadow version of you determines what you see, not just ads, everything. The news stories in your feed, the opinions you encounter, the aesthetic of the images you scroll past, the type of people who appear on your dating apps. Over time, your world shrinks, not obviously, not dramatically, but steadily, like walls closing in so slowly you do not notice until you try to stretch your arms and realize there is no room left. They call it personalization. That is the friendly word, the marketing word. Here is what it actually means. It means you are being slowly enclosed in a world that reflects back to you only what the system has decided you already are. You liked a certain style of furniture once, 3 years ago. You will see that style forever. You watched one documentary about investing. Your feed will fill with finance content until you start to believe you are a finance person. The algorithm does not show you the full menu. It shows you a narrow slice, and it does it so smoothly that you mistake that slice for the whole restaurant. This is the part nobody talks about. The algorithm does not just predict your behavior. Over time, it creates your behavior. There is a feedback loop. You click on something. The system shows you more of it. You click on more of it. The system narrows further. You click again and again. And what started as a mild curiosity becomes a defining feature of your identity. You did not choose to be obsessed with minimalist Japanese design or tactical outdoor gear or true crime podcasts. You were gently, persistently, nudged there by a system that profits from your predictability, because a predictable consumer is a profitable consumer. Surprise is the enemy of the algorithm. The whole system is designed to eliminate surprise, to make your behavior as consistent and as foreseeable as a train on a track. Now zoom out. Think about what this means at a societal level. Millions of people, each living inside their own algorithmically curated bubble, each believing they are exercising free choice, each consuming the narrow band of reality the system has assigned them. This is not just a marketing problem. This is a civilization problem. Because the things you consume do not stay on a screen. They become your values. They become your politics. They become your relationships. When the algorithm decides what you see, it is deciding who you become. And the entity making that decision is not a philosopher or a teacher or a wise elder. It is a machine optimized for one metric, engagement, which, if we are being honest, is just a polite way of saying addiction. The companies that build these systems are not evil in the way that a villain in a movie is evil. They do not sit around a table cackling about controlling your mind. They sit around a table looking at growth metrics and user retention charts. The manipulation is a byproduct, a side effect, but the fact that it is unintentional does not make it less real. A flood is not intentional. It still destroys your house. So where does this leave you? If the game is rigged, if the algorithm has been shaping your choices for years, maybe decades, is there any way out? Here is the honest answer. Yes, but it is not easy, and it is not fun, and it requires something that no app can sell you: discomfort. The first step is the hardest because it is the most humbling. You have to accept that many of the preferences you hold dear, the brands you are loyal to, the aesthetics you gravitate toward, the content you consume, may not be entirely yours. They may be artifacts of a system that shaped you without your knowledge. This does not mean you are a robot. It does not mean nothing you feel is real. It means that the soil your identity grew in was not neutral ground. It was fertilized by interests that had nothing to do with your well-being. The second step is strategic friction. The algorithm thrives on ease. One click, autoplay, infinite scroll, same-day delivery. Every single one of these features is designed to remove the gap between impulse and action. And that gap, that tiny pause between wanting and doing, is where your freedom lives. So you have to put the friction back. Delete the saved credit cards, turn off autoplay, set screen time limits, unsubscribe from every email list, make buying something require effort, make consumption inconvenient again. Not impossible, just hard enough that you have to actually think about it for 30 seconds before you act. The third step is the most radical, and it is this: spend time in silence, real silence. Not with a podcast in your ear, not with a meditation app guiding you, just nothing. Because the algorithm cannot reach you in silence. It cannot track what you think when you are staring out a window. It cannot predict what you want when you do not know what you want. And that state of genuine not knowing, of sitting with uncertainty and boredom and the low hum of your own unfiltered mind, that is where your actual self begins. This is not a productivity hack. This is not a life optimization strategy. This is something much older than that. For thousands of years, in every culture on earth, there has been a tradition of stepping away from the noise of the marketplace. The Stoics called it retreat into the inner citadel. The Buddhists called it detachment. The desert monks called it solitude. And they did not do it because it was pleasant. They did it because they understood something that we have conveniently forgotten. That a mind constantly stimulated is a mind easily controlled. The French mathematician Blaise Pascal wrote in the 1600s that all of humanity's problems stem from our inability to sit quietly in a room alone. That was 400 years ago. Before electricity, before radio, before television, before the internet, before the smartphone. If it was true then, imagine how catastrophically true it is now, when every pocket contains a device specifically engineered to make sitting quietly the hardest thing in the world. Here is the final thought, and it is the one I want you to carry with you. The opposite of the algorithm is not another algorithm. It is not a better app, or a smarter filter, or a digital detox retreat that costs $2,000 a weekend. The opposite of the algorithm is a question. A simple, uncomfortable, almost childlike question. Do I actually want this? Not do I want this according to my past behavior. Not do I want this because it was placed in front of me at the exact moment I was most vulnerable. But do I, the person underneath all the data, the person who existed before the first tracking cookie, the person who used to get bored on a Sunday afternoon and just wander around the neighborhood with no destination, do I actually want this? Most people never ask that question. Not because they cannot, because they are never given the space to. The feed is always there. The next recommendation is always loading. The cart is always one click away. And as long as the noise never stops, the question never surfaces. So here is my advice, for whatever it is worth, coming from someone who has spent years pulling apart the mechanics of how money and power and persuasion actually work in this world. Log off. Not forever. Not performatively. Just long enough for the silence to become uncomfortable. And then, stay in that discomfort for 1 minute longer than you think you can stand. Because in that minute, in that one extra minute of nothing, you might hear something you have not heard in a very long time. Your own voice. Not the algorithm's echo of your voice. Not the curated, optimized, engagement, maximized version of your preferences. Just you, unfiltered, uncertain, free. And from that place, and only from that place, you can finally start making choices that are actually yours.